Hey team, how's it going? Welcome to another stream today from Hygraph. You may notice no Tim today. Well, I'm certainly no Tim Bennix. We're letting him get a little bit of a well-deserved vacation this week. So you're with me. I'm Bryan Robinson. I'm the head of DevRel here at Hygraph. And today we're going to be talking about multiple frameworks. We're going to get up and running with Hygraph in 3 different front-end frameworks. I'm probably going to break my brain just a little bit working through this. We're going to be working with Astro.js, Nuxt.js, and Next.js, and we're actually going to be taking it probably alphabetically, to be fair, right? Because all these frameworks are actually quite excellent. I enjoy each of them for their own purposes. So I don't want to give one any undue credit over the others, even though I may know Astro and Next way better than I know Nuxt. I'm not putting them first because I know them better. I'm putting them first because alphabetically that makes sense for me. So yeah, before we get started, feel free to ask questions all through this process. You can do it on whatever platform you're watching on today, but you can also do it via our Slack community at slack.hygraph.com. I'll be monitoring all of that as we go. And we're going to dive in and talk about Astro first, but I see that we do have Peter on YouTube saying he does have questions. So Peter, post your questions in the chat. Let me know as we go forward, and I'll be sure to pick them up as we go. But we're going to start today, actually, from this screen. We're going to start completely blank. I have no Hygraph project set up. I have no boilerplate projects set up for this. In fact, here's my screen, right? I just have an open terminal. We'll populate everything as we go here. But we're going to be following this lovely implementations guide on our documentation site, which is hygraph.com/docs. And you can see we have this implementation section, and the implementations have, oh, what is this? The 3 frameworks we're going to be talking about today, right? We're going to be talking about Astro, Next, and Nuxt, and they are all here. But we're going to go to this landing page for it first because we have a little bit of work to do to get this set up. Hey, Dindin, how's it going today? Good to see you. All right, so first and foremost, we're going to need a Hygraph project. Please ignore just how many projects I have here. I am a DevRel after all, and we have lots of work that we have to do. We have all these nice starters when you go to app.hygraph.com or when you log into your dashboard. We're not going to start with any of the starters, even though all of these starters are actually available in these 3 frameworks that we're talking about today. We're going to add a blank project to start with, and we'll call it multi-framework implementation. And I'm going to select a region. I'm in the US, so I'll add it to US East. So while this populates, oh, super fast. I will also point out that today we are going to be working within the new Hygraph Studio, which is our beta. You can still work in the classic. You can work in this new one. Few things are still being worked on to get us to feature parity with the old one. I'm going to choose to use the Studio today. It's a nicer, cleaner design with some new quick bells and whistles thrown in. All right, so I have a project. Let's figure out what I need to do. And this implementation page starts us off very quickly with telling us we need an API. We need our API to be able to work here. So we will go in and we will set up in our project settings, in our endpoints. You can see we have these 4 endpoints. They're not actually public yet. So I want to go ahead and set up our defaults for our public API. You could set this up with permissions and tokens and stuff like that. For the ease today, I want this to be an open public API. It's going to have the ability to read only everything on all stages or on the stage of published for any locales, any localizations that we've got. I'm only doing 1 language today. I think that'll be easier. But for the most part, this would give us all of that. And now we do have these endpoints. I'm going to be using the high performance endpoint as we go. And you can see here, when I access it, that if I wanted to, I could get this nice graphical interface for it. But you can see now it is actually an open API, and we are good to go for that. So let's scroll down here, and we can see that we're basically done. But we are going to need some content as well. So I'm going to take a little detour. I'm going to set up a very simple schema. So we're in the schema. As you can see, there's only the default asset model. We need a new model. We're going to make this, let's make it a blog. So we'll just have, let's call it posts. And let's add that model in. Oh, sorry. Yep. Nope. This will be an API ID of post, and it can just be singular for the display name as well. All right, so as that adds in, there we go. We will add a single line of text, which will be our title. We will make it the title field, which in Studio is now a default for the first string field you had, which I think is kind of nice. And we will add that in. I could make it required. It would probably make sense to have it be required. I also know, since in the implementation we're going to do today, we're going to make a list of blog posts, and each of those blog posts will need a slug, so we can have a URL for our dynamic routes, that I'm going to need a slug field. And we're going to generate it from a template, and I'm just going to take it from the title field. And then I'm going to play it safe and easy today, and we're going to do a markdown field instead of just pure rich text, and we'll call this content. And I think that's all I'm going to want on that one. So we'll add that in, and this will be our first model that we'll be able to go and add some content in for here. So let me add in a title. This is our first blog post. You can see the slug automatically updates, and then we'll say H2 for our blog post, and we'll say lorem ipsum dollar amet sum, and we'll just kind of make a nice paragraph here. We'll publish that in. And since we're making a list, I'll probably want to go ahead and have 2 of these. So let's go add another. Second blog post title, and the same content. Let's say H2 for our second blog post. Save and publish that. And I think that's enough content for the moment. Now we get to start our fun, right? We have content, we have our API, and we'll use this content and this API to power all 3. And we have limited time. We have 53 minutes, and I want to get these implementations, all 3, done. So let's run over to our Astro plus Hygraph implementation guide, which I'll post over in the chat as well. And we're going to run npm create Astro at the latest. So let's do that in our terminal. And I'm going to go ahead and get ready. I could have gone with Tailwind. Let's not do Tailwind right now. Let's just get a single thing up. We will call this one Astro Hygraph. Let's just use empty. I'm not going to write TypeScript today. Install, yes. We don't need a new Git repo right now. So that's going to go ahead and copy that in. And let's get to work on configuring things for that. So it looks like if we want to have the image work properly with the image tag, we don't really need to worry about that today, but I'll go ahead and showcase this. For both Astro and Next, and possibly Nuxt, you do need to have these patterns in there so that the image tags will work. Oh, I have a question from Peter that I missed. Can we have an image in the post model? Because it's a follow-up question. Oh, yeah, okay. Let me put that up on screen here, right? I bet we can do that. So are you wanting for this there to be a like a an image field, or do you think it would be an image in the rich text as a follow-up question to your question? But we'll go ahead and add in, we will assume that you're talking about an image in the model itself and not in the, let's see, it's a Boolean date JSON asset picker. There it is. We'll call it banner image. Sure, we'll just call it that for now. We're only going to allow for 1, and we're not going to make it a required field. All right, so let's add that image field in. Peter says that's what he's going to be asking about later on. And I don't know that I have any good images saved locally. Actually, the banner for this is local. So look, there's me. Let's add that here, just so we have one of our projects having that, so that we can talk about that in a bit. And let's save and publish. And it's going to ask if I want to save that asset and publish the asset. I do. And that is published as well now. So we have that available as well. To add asset for it. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Alexi. Alexi's one of our amazing product managers. All right. So we got that added in so we can have a question later on. And again, if we choose to use the image tag on this, that we would need to set this up. So let's go ahead and set this up as well. So let's come over to our view here, and let's go ahead and just open this entire directory in VS Code. You can see I've got the Astro directory here, and let's go ahead and go in there, cd into Astro, and let's run npm run dev to get things running. And you can see inside this Astro folder, we do have the astro.config, and it did suggest that we wanted to put this in here as well. So let's put this right there and get rid of that. There we go. So let's see, I have one too many of these. There we go. All right, so now we have in our default defined config object, the image with the protocol and the graph assets, which is where our images are as well. All right, so we need to now get the data from Hygraph. You can see if you wanted to follow along and you didn't want to deal with setting up the model, creating the content, we do actually have a clonable demo project that you can utilize right here that will have the body, which I didn't call it that, the slug, and the title, which is basically what we set up already. And says put some content in, enable your public API, and then test a query in the playground. So let's follow its advice. Let's go to our playground and let's build our query. So we don't need any of that. I was doing some other work the other day. We want to get our posts, and we want to get our posts that have our title, our slug, and our content. So we play that, and you can see here we have both the posts with our title, slug, and the content, and we now have an image as well. So let's grab, what did I call that? I called that banner image. And you can see here, I can get the banner image where I can get the URL. I can do some transformations around it. Let's go ahead and do a transformation on the image to resize. Oh, that's sharpen. I clicked the wrong button. To resize to a width of, let's call it 500, and play that. Oh. Field type int was not provided. Oh, it still thinks I've got sharpen. Whoops. So let's get rid of the sharpen off of that. I don't need to sharpen it. There we go. So no banner image on the first post, but on the second post, we now have that, and it has our resize built into the URL that we're going to get out. So this is going to be what we'll end up using for our implementation. You can see here, we need to set up an environment variable, probably. So let's go ahead and toss that in here. And we need it to be our endpoint that we have in our project. So let's go into our project and grab that content endpoint again. I can already tell you that I'm running behind on the speed that I wanted to go through this, but we will persevere. So there it is, save that in. Let me double check that it is, yeah, .env, because each framework is going to do this slightly differently. I think Next is going to want to be in a .env.local file. And then we'll scroll down, and then we can get this package, which is a really handy package to have, called GraphQL request. It makes doing the fetch request a lot easier. So let's add that in. And then we're going to, on our home page route, which we don't currently have, actually. We can actually run this. So here's the home page as it currently stands, localhost 4321. And so we need to do a few things here. So let's copy this, and I'll walk through it in the code. Let's go into our source directory, pages, and the index page. And you can see in Astro, we have the gates up top. We actually can do front matter, and in the front matter, we can do asynchronous functions, which is super handy. And for now, I'm going to replace all of this, and let's take a look at what we've got. So first and foremost, we are importing GraphQL client from that new package that we've got. I don't have a main layout currently. And then we've got this idea of posts, which is what we called things this time. And let's do our post query here. And actually, let's go grab that from the playground so that we get exactly what we want. So my query is going to become that query that we made. Paste that here. Make sure that we end everything that we need to. Let's see. Yep. And then post declared, but it's never read. Yeah, we're going to read it momentarily. So you can see here we're awaiting. Again, we have top level asynchronous functions here, and we don't need this main implementation anymore. So let's get rid of that. And then change our pages to posts because I went off script, and save. So what we're doing here, when we got some breakage, is we're just writing some simple HTML. And then inside of these curly braces, which is where we're going to be able to invoke JavaScript in our templating language in Astro, we're going to map over the posts array that we're theoretically getting back in our front matter. And then we're creating a list item for each of them that will have a URL to, let's make it posts, the post.slug. And this is actually trying to be TypeScript for me, and I don't actually want that. All right, so post.title, post.slug, and we'll create an anchor for each of those. Let's see what our error is. Only absolute URLs are supported. Interesting. Probably because I'm not calling this properly. Let's real fast do a quick look on this environment variable. Love live coding. All right. So let's run a console log in our front matter here, which should fire in this terminal. And let's restart the server so that we can see things a little bit better. All right, and save that in. All right, no error this time. So let's see. All right, so it's complaining about what URL? Node fetch. Okay, so the problem is this. It's not actually getting... Oh, I see where the issue is. Friends, don't put your env file in the root of your test project. Put it actually in the directory that you're working within. This should now give us, there we go. All right, so this is our first blog post, second blog post. We now have those in. Those are pulling from our API. And now they will direct somebody to /posts/ this is our first blog post, which does not exist yet. We haven't made that file. So let's go back to our implementation guide. You can see we've actually caught up. This is where we're supposed to be. Now we need to create dynamic routes in Astro. This is routes pulling from the API. So you can see here, we're going to make a new file. We're going to put it in a page, or actually we're going to make this from the posts directory. And it's going to have this dynamic route in these square brackets called slug.astro. So let's do that real fast. So inside the pages directory, we're going to make a new file in the post directory called bracket slug bracket.js. No, sorry, .astro is going to be what we want there. This bodes well for when I do Nuxt later in the stream. All right, so now we have a dynamic route there. You can see we're still getting that 404 because we now need to grab all of this. And let's just go in here and grab the front matter and walk through that. All right, so again, we have imports. So we're importing GraphQL client. We don't need the main anymore. We're going to grab that client and make a new one. Again, I could actually abstract this out and I could put this as a utility file somewhere and just call that in, import that. But it's easier on stream just to do it this way. And then with Astro, much like older Next, if you're familiar with older Next, you have this kind of idea of get static paths because Astro wants everything to be statically generated. So what Astro is going to do here is it's going to try to make these happen, these slugs, which we could do this in multiple ways. We could pull them in statically like this, or we could actually make an API call, grab those slugs from our posts and go there. So let's do that real fast. So instead of returning these get static paths, we're going to actually get from a query all of our slugs. So you can see here, we're not doing that down here. So let's grab a new client and we're going to say const, we'll call this one post pages. And we will say this is going to equal to await the client.request. And that's going to allow us to basically put in a GraphQL query. which is going to get all of our slugs, and we're going to generate the slugs. And so we're going to have, let's get a query for that. So get rid of title, get rid of all this other stuff in here. We just need the slug for each of them. Here it is. So let's put that here. And this is going to be, instead of post pages, we will just get posts from there. And then we will loop through that in our get static paths to create these. And so what we need here is, let's make it as its own variable. Const params list is going to be equal to, and this will be what I call it up here, posts dot map. We'll map over that, and we'll get a post for each one. And then we will return out, I think we should just go with this as its own straight up object. And so we'll say the params colon, and then we'll have a slug that is equal to the post dot slug. And then just for my own benefit, console log the params list. So now, as these try to generate, yes, we have an error that post is not defined. So let's see. Console log posts. And let's see, let's restart the server so that it runs through all those get static paths again. Question, how do I access the image field from within my blog? That's a good question. The main thing that you're going to do, Peter, let's put that on screen real fast. Let me answer that. Is that in your query, you're going to take that image field, and there's a whole bunch of different things that you have available on it, right? What we're going to do is, in this case, we have the banner image. Inside the banner image, we need to get the URL. You don't have to do these transformations. You can just get the URL, and you'll get your full-size image at that point. But what we actually want is to do the transformation so that you can resize it. You pass this in, it creates a URL for you that has the right parameters to get the resized image. You can also, on this, get the width and the height of the image as well. So you can get all these things in there, and then you can pass that into whatever template language you're using, whether that's Next, Astro, Nuxt, 11D, Jinja, whatever you're using. And you can get this URL and paste that into either your HTML image tag or into your image handler of choice. All right, so save this. Error occurred. Posts not defined. Which posts? From inside of get static paths. All right, so let's see if this is gated, and let's move all of this to within our get static paths call. We're going to await that. And it can only be in, okay, this is an async function. Let's see. All right, now we want this all to be top level. All right, and then when we come in here, this is the problem. The post is not defined inside of this get static paths. Which I feel like it should be. So this is where the fun begins. All right, well, what we can do so we can keep this stream moving is that I'm going to take these and we'll just keep our static params for the time being. So instead of doing all of our fun here, let's keep our slugs, and let's get the 2 slugs that we need. All right. There we go. Get rid of this third one because we don't have the third one. And then we're going to get the post. We're going to look for a slug in the post where the post query has a where we check for the slug is this slug variable that we are setting down here. And we're getting that slug from the params that Astro is passing in. And that's from this params object up here. And then from there, we actually have the post available in the page. So let's take a look here. Body's not defined because this is now called content. And we have a banner image that we'll get the URL off of. All right. And here we go. All right. So we actually have, this is here, right? We're no longer getting a 404, which means that we can now start populating it. So we can come down into our template. Let's make an H1. And the H1 will have our post.title. This is our first blog post. And then we need, let's get our banner image. So I'm not going to use the straight up image component. I'm just going to use an image tag. So we're going to have a source, and the source will be our banner image.url. So this is kind of what Peter was looking at earlier. And then we need our content. So within this, we have Markdown coming, and I've got to see if this will actually work. But we want to put the Markdown here. It might not actually work, but we'll just have it spit out the Markdown for now. So we just want the content here. And then banner image is not defined. So let's put a conditional around this. So, because on one of our blog posts, right, it does not have a banner image. So we'll say if there's a banner image, do this image. And actually, all these are post dot anyway, so I need to think about that. Post dot banner image. This is also post dot banner image, and this is post dot content. All right. So there's our content. It is coming through as just the markdown string. We go back. This is actually where it would have been better to have used the rich text to power this, but we did that a different way because we're special. And it was very, very much required for me to do it very differently. You can see on this one, there is no image, but if we go back to our home page and go to the second blog post, there's our image. So the image was actually there, and you can see this is how we're pulling that in, Peter. So we just had that image with a source. So Peter's second question, if I was posting data from front end, how do I upload an image? I do know how to post the data, but not when it comes to the, okay. This is actually one of the more complex things. And I'm not gonna be able to show it with time today. However, we do have a great set of documentation around it. And there is a new methodology. So there are two asset handlers right now. One is the legacy one. So if you made a project prior to about 3 or 4 weeks ago, you're on the old one. And if you're on the new one for any projects that you just created. So let's talk about uploading assets. I'll share this in the chat. It is a little bit more complicated, Peter. So do check that link out. Basically, what you end up having to do is you're making both a content entry in the asset model and you're doing the upload kind of together. The new asset handler does this in a much more streamlined way. So definitely look into that if you're able to. We're going to be providing some migration documentation very soon to take legacy projects over to it. But the new asset handler is going to make it a lot easier for you as well. So you can see here, second blog post title, and we have the image. So technically at this point, we do have our Astro implementation. And again, you can follow these step by step in the documentation, in the implementation guide, but you can also take a look at a few other starters that we've got, including our microblog Astro starter and our skincare starter as well, which Tim is in the audience today on his vacation. Tim is the author of the skincare demo. That's also available in Next and Nuxt. And then we also have additional resources on getting started, some of them written by me. And that's why it's surprising that I couldn't make some of it work earlier. So that's Astro. Let's go ahead and get a move on, close out of our Astro project here, and let's move back up into our multi-framework stream directory, and let's go through the same thing on Next. So let's create a new Next project in this directory, which, yeah, my Next project, that's fine. We will initialize, what do we want here? See, we actually called out what we want on this one. So no TypeScript, yes, ESLint, yes, Tailwind, no source directory, yes, app router. Okay, so TypeScript, no, ESLint, yes, yes, no, and yes, and no. So that's going to make it all build into my next project, which we will go into here. And we will do the same thing once this finishes building here. Romina in the chat is saying, if not mistaken, the way image is part of your blog post is via relation. So you need to first upload the asset and then, yes, oops. And Romina very much would know about this, as she's the one that wrote the documentation on it. So yeah, you're going to be creating the relation, or creating the image document and relating it to the entry first. And no problem, Peter. Thanks for the question. All right, so we now have this, and so we're going to go into our next project. We're going to double check that installed. I think Next installs it for you, which is very handy. And we're going to run npm run dev on this. And let's close out of all of our files here. Close out the Astro one. And now you can see the directory that we get here. We have public, we have our app, which has very little in it at this point. We have JS config, next config, all that lovely stuff. I know from experience that we need a .env.local, and I was smart and I grabbed that from the Astro project, and we're going to need to rename it, and we'll get that from the implementation guide here. So we get the Tailwind stuff, we move in, we run npm install. This is what it should look like, so let's make sure that it is what it looks like. So localhost 3000 this time. So instead of Astro, which is no longer running, let's get localhost 3000. All right, it looks slightly different because I guess my version of create next app is slightly different than the one that we ran before, but it's there. And let's run through it again. So if we want to use, again, the image tag, we do that. I'm going to skip it for next. Again, you can get the demo project on this page. And we tested that. Hey, look, there's Tim. Hey, Tim. All right. So next Hygraph endpoint is the name of it here. Save that in. And then we're going to, on our page.jsx, which is the way that Next considers it. So app, page.js, and layout.js. This is our global layout and our index page for Next. We're going to grab all of this lovely content and take a look at it. All right. So you can see here, we're setting our endpoint. We are creating a fetch request. This time we're not using GraphQL request on this one. It's just a static fetch, which you can use in any of your projects since it is GraphQL. We're going to make a post request, and we're going to send it a query. And again, this query is posts that have title, slug, and content. And then we're going to await that JSON and then return that as the pages. And then since we have this function in our next file called get pages, which I will just keep it that way, we can actually run that here as get pages as an async function, or as an awaited function here. And then that will populate this loop. And you'll notice there's a lot of similarities between this and the way that Astro works. Astro has it in the front matter, but this is just a regular function in Next. But in Next, we're doing the same thing, right? Inside of our template, we're running through some JavaScript that maps over our posts and gets a post and grabs the slug and the slug here and the title. And here you can see one key difference is we are running with a key. The key is a unique identifier for anything that you have in a map inside of React. So Next is pure React. we have to have a key on each of our list items here since it is an iterated idea. It doesn't like posts because that's undefined. So that's because we're doing this. Again, you change one little thing and everything goes wrong. All right, save. And here it is with some awesome gradients in the background. Because again, I didn't change some of our default styling, but you can see here we have this is our first blog post and our second blog post, and both, just like in the Astro one, are going to a 404 at this point because we need a dynamic route for both as well. So let's continue following along. So we have in our directory, we have something called pages, which we're going to call posts/slug. In this time, we're putting the dynamic piece in the directory name. So let's make a new file. There's going to be posts, and then we do a dynamic slug, again, with these square brackets. And then in this case, with the new naming convention in the app router for Next 13 and 14, page.js or JSX. And this is going to be where our dynamic piece comes in. And you can see we're doing a very similar thing here that we were doing before, but we're not going to have to build this statically, right? There's no get static paths in the new version of Next. We're going to do this as a React server component, and it will just kind of work out. So in this case, we're doing a very similar thing that we did on the homepage. We are getting a response that fetches the next Hygraph endpoint. We are looking again for a singular post where the slug matches a slug. And again, we need the content. The variable is called slug, and we're getting slug from the get page function, which is invoked down here in our page from Next. We're getting that from the params. The params are getting it from the URL that's here. And the theory is it's actually matching up to this dynamic piece here. This is the variable. That's why it's called slug here. And it matches up to the dynamic piece in the square brackets over in our folder structure. So we've got page params. The params are passing the slug in. The slug is being used in our variables in our GraphQL. GraphQL is passing that into our post query where we are getting the title, slug, and content. Then we need to make sure that we're naming everything correctly. I'm going to call it post here. And then instead of page.body.text, we need the post.content. Post. And then there will be a link back to the home page. And let's see if we have done it correctly. Getting errors because we're looking for page, not post. So let's go back to our home page and fix that real fast. You can see here I've got to change our static piece to this link. So that should be post. And we go back to the home page, click. The URL is now post, and it is posts, not post. There we go. All right, now we have an error. That's fine. Cannot read undefined of property post.title. So that means that our post is not getting defined properly. So let's take a look at why that might be. So let's console log our posts. Oh, because it's posts, which is not what we want. Post and get pages is fine. Oh, I'm on the wrong page right now. Go here. Here we go. All right. So post is equal to the get page, which we kept named that way, where we pass it the params.slug. So let's make sure that we're getting the right slug up here. So log the slug and find that console log. Restart the server so we can see things better. And also see, I do like Astro's errors a little bit better. All right, lots of errors. The problem is we're getting a 500, which means we're getting a server error because it's trying to find these things. But where is my slug? Here it is, slug, second blog post title. So we are getting it. We then pass it into this, where slug is equal to slug. Let's make sure that this is what we actually want. So let's run this here in our playground, and we need a variable where slug is equal to this, and run that. All right, so the query is correct, so that's good. So that means that somewhere here, things are breaking down. So let's take a look at our JSON that we get back and see where the breakdown's happening. All right, JSON is coming back at data, which is what we expect, but it's post. Chat, next time I decide to go off book, let's make sure that I remember things like this, where things are so much easier when you follow things step by step and don't try to make it your own. So you can see here, we have second blog post, we have the title, and then if we wanted to, we could go in and add our banner image and get the URL for that. And then we can add that here as well via an image tag. Let's make sure that only if it exists. So banner image.url, and let's just do a standard image where we get the post. Again, that almost bit me just then as well, just like it did on Astro. So image source is post.banner image.url. And I've got one too many brackets, and I need to close that tag and put that there. All right, and there it is. So on this one, we have one, and then when we get back to the home page and go to the first one, which is again the wrong URL, posts. This one errors because we need to use the nullish something or other words. Put the question marks in here. This way, all along the way, if any of these come back as null or undefined, it will go ahead and return false for this entire thing, as opposed to trying to find these things and then erroring. So now we have no image on this one, and we can go back to the home page. And just because I'm me, I do want to make sure in here that I change this out as well. Even though I'm not using this anywhere else, this should be /posts. Refresh, and now these will work. And that's next. And we have 18 minutes left, and we can do Nuxt. So I'll pause for a second while we get ready for Nuxt, and I'll ask any questions coming from how I know I'm going through these fast. We have an hour to work on these things. So yeah, if you have any questions, don't forget to post over in the chat, and I will answer them, much like Peter's been asking those image questions. Those are super handy questions to have. I think they're good for education across the board. All right, before I close out of that, I should have copied it because we're going to want all this again. All right, so next up, actually, let me leave that open for the moment. Next up, we need to go back to our implementation guides. And I will tell you, again, as we look at these, the same goes for the Nuxt as for the Next as for the Astro. We also have an example of how you can get up and running with one of our Next starters. This one is a Netflix clone that has some information pulled from a remote source. We also have all of these lovely starters in all of the starters for Next. We have quite a few of them. And we also have snippets and resources. And again, we have quite a few of those as well, including some live streams that we have done in the past. But we need to talk about Nuxt. And here's where I get nervous, because I have done Hello Worlds in Nuxt. I am not a Nuxt dev, and I don't have Tim with me. He might be in the chat, but I don't have him here with me in studio. So that's going to be the big test of how these implementation guides are. So we are going to install Nuxt, and we're going to say, yes, it's fine to install that locally. You can see I haven't done this because that wanted me to install the package globally. And so it's going to run all the stuff for us. It's going to take us through all this. We're going to use npm because that's the kind of dev I am. And that's running. So let's look at what we need to do. We're going to need to go into the project. We're going to need to install, and then npm run dev. You'll notice there's very much similarities between all of these, right? Like we go install from the framework CLI, run npm install in the project, run npm run dev in the project. All of these things are pretty consistent across all the frameworks nowadays. Nuxt is a little bit beefier, it looks like. It's taking a little bit more time than Next and Astro did. Although Next and Astro ran npm for us. which is also an interesting thing. So it tells us move into cd my Nuxt project. I guess you can't actually see what I'm doing because I'm in the way here. Let's fix that real fast. There we go. And then we will run npm run dev. The nice thing is both the implementation guide and the CLI here told us the same things. All right, so theoretically, now the fun thing is, since it's running in the same port as Next, we don't have to change anything. It's like, oh, hey, look. Oh, you can also get the Nuxt DevTools. I've actually heard really great things about Nuxt DevTools. I'm not going to do that right now. Can I just click get started? I don't actually want, can you go away? Click you maybe. There we go. This is the same as Astro has this built in too, where they've got this kind of control panel that pops out from the bottom. I like it as an idea. So you can see we have all of the standard Nuxt implementation here. And we're going to configure, let's see, this is the same as all the other ones. If we want to use the image handler from Nuxt, we want to make sure that it has the base URL ready to go. You can clone your project. So let's scroll on down to generating Hygraph content with Nuxt. Let's see. I don't know if I need to do these things, but let's go ahead and do them, because what happened the last time, cancel. The last time I tried to go off book, bad things, right? So let's make sure that we do everything proper this time. So let's close out that. Let's open this, and then let's go and run npm install Nuxt Tailwind, and we will need Nuxt GraphQL client, which is different from what we've done on both. So the cool thing about this is we get to see 3 different ways of handling GraphQL as well. We used GraphQL request in Astro. We used just a static JavaScript node fetch in Next. Again, we could have used GraphQL request in that as well. And now there's a specific one for Nuxt that we're going to use here. So we've got that installed. And then we're going to update our Nuxt config. So going to Nuxt config here, and we're going to update it to have DevTools enabled, and we're going to have our modules of Tailwind and Nuxt GraphQL client there. And then we need to close the various elements there that I missed. You can see here, it was in there. I should have just clicked the copy button, right? That would have been helpful. And then we need to call this the GQL host in our Nuxt config. So if we go back, not in our Nuxt config, in our .env file, which for Nuxt is .env. Excellent news. So here we need a new file, .env. It's going to be called this, and since we have, oh no, it closed. Let's go back into the next project real fast. From our env.local, let's grab this entire URL. And that's what our GQL host or GraphQL host will be for Nuxt. So we match all of that together. And again, hey, Tim, there's Tim again. All of these have individual videos that walk you through it as well. And then we're going to add our queries into a queries directory. Again, this is a different way of handling it than some of our other projects have in the rest of the stream. So we need a file called pages.gql, and I'm going to follow along, but I'm going to call it posts. I'm going to go off book. I told you I wouldn't, but I'm going to. So queries posts.gql is what we want here. So new file, queries/posts.gql. And you can see here we get the little GraphQL logo, always a fun feature. And we're going to write our queries in here. We need both of these for the plural posts and for the singular. Oh, so the pages or posts will have the plural, and page will have the, or post will have the singular, post.gql. And we copy from the documentation. And all this is going to need to change. So we'll call this post. We don't need the body. We need the content. And we won't need the slug in this one, apparently, but we do need it here. And this will be, again, the content. And this will be the posts query. Save that. Things are happening. Let's see. Errors are happening. All right, let's see. Invalid codegen configuration. Please make sure your codegen config file contains generates field. All right, let's see. The other thing we can do is these also exist as a GitHub project as well. We can go take a look at that if we need to cheat. But I don't want to cheat. I want to debug it live with you. All right. So did we miss a step up here? That would be very much like me. No. Adding Tailwind, adding GraphQL queries. All right. And this is where CodeGen always gets me, right? If you do things wrong, CodeGen yells at you. Whereas if you do things wrong when you're doing everything yourself, you yell at you. I like to yell at myself better. All right. Please make sure that your CodeGen config file contains generates. So I need a CodeGen config file. Where does that need to go? And again, the great thing is we're going to add this to the documentation after I'm done today, because this will be handy to have. No utility class was detected in the source files. Okay, that's fine. Let's stop the server and let's run the server again. Maybe it didn't pick up things that we needed. All right. Error deprecation warning. That's probably fine. The error is not the same this time. So let's see if we have an error here. Okay, so this is up and running. No errors there. So in theory, I think this was because I needed to restart my server to pick up all the things that we did in the Nuxt config, if I had to guess here. All right, so next step in our Nuxt configuration, let's take the index.view in the pages directory. So outside of this, we've got, I guess we're going to make that from scratch. We need index.view in pages. So in my Nuxt project, we need a pages directory that has an index.view file. And then we'll paste this in. This has our script, which is going to make a query from our GQL. And we are going to then have a template, and the template is going to, much like the other ones, we're going to have a list. The list is going to have a v-for loop, which is how we're going to do this inside of our view. And it's going to have a key just like Next had as well. So let's see. All right, we do have an error. Pages index.view, macros true. Well, that is not a particularly helpful syntax error, is it? All right, let's see where this could be going wrong. Doesn't like this because we don't have a pages. We only have posts. And again, see, let's not do this in the future, y'all. Let's do what we're supposed to do. Let's do things and name things what they're supposed to be in our lovely documentation. Let's not go off book. Post for all this and save that. All right, let's make sure we changed everything. Oh, and we also have inside, we have an app.view, which has the Nuxt welcome, which is probably not what we want. Your project has pages, but the Nuxt page component has not been used. Ah, this is a good error. Okay. You might be using the route viewer. So I want this in here, I believe. Oops. Instead of Nuxt welcome. That's what I'm going to guess. Again, not being a Nuxt developer. There we go. All right. The nice thing is errors like that, it teaches you in the console. So again, we are now back to where we were. We have a first and a second one. We don't have these yet because we need to configure those just like we configured all the other ones. So let's scroll on down and let's take a look at the individual route. So again, we're going to have a pages directory where we're going to have a post directory and a file called slug.view. So let's run through that real fast. We're going to have a new file in the posts directory at slug.view. Again, the conventions are all very similar between each of these frameworks for doing dynamic routes. And then we're going to copy this and we're going to make our changes. We're going to remember that we're not making pages anymore. We're making a post. where we're going to get as the slug, the route params slug that gets passed into our GQL page. I think I did remember to keep that correct. What did we do on index? GQL pages. So this will be GQL page. That doesn't sound right at all. It is though, I think. All right. And then we need a post, and then the post is going to be used down here for all of our variables. So post.title, this is not going to be post.body.text, this will be post.content. And again, if we wanted to, we could bring the image in here as well. And okay, invalid end tag. I broke something. Breaking things is my specialty. All right. What are we complaining about? What do we got? We got a template that closes. We have 2 templates, which is interesting. Why do we have two templates? Did I copy and paste that wrong? I might have copied and pasted that twice. That'd be fun. All right. Let's see. Oh, you know what? Yeah, I copied and pasted that into just a weird spot. So let's grab. No, I didn't copy and paste that into a weird spot. I must have copied and pasted twice. So let's get rid of this template and put it where the other one is supposed to go, because we have this script end and script end, which is not what we wanted. And now let's replace this template. All right. GQL page is not defined. So where does that need to be? How do we do this over here? Const posts equals await GQL pages. That worked on the home page. So that means that our posts and our post are different enough that something's breaking there. So let's look at them side by side. I said side by side. All right. So queries, page, pages, and then posts. Let's see. I was reading documentation. I want to confirm something for me. Per the documentation, let's see. It states I should upload the file first to the asset handler. The response I get from the above URL should be used to, yes, that is accurate. And if Ramina's in the chat, she can give you some additional pointers there, I think. But the idea, I think that's from the new asset handler. So when you make the new document for the asset, then it will give you a response that gives you a unique place to upload your image to. And again, that's that streamlined process I was referring to earlier. Let's see, Luciano is saying there's some functionality to search fields and a map key value for dynamic fields that change depending on the product, for example. I'm not sure I completely understand what you were going at there, Luciano, but maybe that's just because I'm not a Nuxt person. Although I'm looking here, and this is an unsaved file. Always look for the dot up there. So let's save that in. Let's see what happens there. Let's restart the server too, just to double check. It did say that it restarted, but always double check that. All right. Loading. Beat server warmed up. There it is. Okay, yeah. So that was when I copied and pasted the post.gql file. I didn't save it, so it didn't exist yet. Again, small things will get you every time. So yeah, so we're getting the GQL page, which is coming from this. Again, I named things poorly. I do apologize for that. But we're getting a post with the title and the content. And again, if I wanted to, I could grab the banner image and put it in there. I'm not familiar enough with Vue to do that, I think, properly. So I'm going to hold off on that. But now, if we go back to the home page, we can go to the first and the second blog posts, and they exist. So we did it. It is 1 minute till the hour. So we went through 3 different implementations, some rockier than others. In our work today, we did Astro to begin with, we did Next, and we did Nuxt. We got them all done within the hour, all of them using this lovely set of guides that we have in our documentation for implementations. You can see we also have starters for Nuxt as well. So skincare is here. Again, shout out to Tim, who's on vacation this week. for doing the skincare and all of these. But we also have the microblog as well in Nuxt. And then we also have some lovely resources there as well. So check out the implementation guides in our documentation. We also have a Svelte Kit 1 coming very soon, probably in the next couple of weeks, that will follow this same kind of process and get you up and running, hopefully in a 15-minute process, so you can play around with dynamic routes and with Hygraph in multiple projects. So with that, I will pause for a second, make sure there aren't any additional questions coming in. It looks like everyone is good to go, other than the asset questions, which, Peter, I'm going to go ahead and put up a banner real fast. If you do have questions, the best place to go is going to be our Slack community. So as one of our calls to action here today, go to slack.hygraph.com. We do answer questions in there. I'm one of the people that will answer questions. We have our support team in there. Rumina's in there, Lo, Tim, the entire DevRel team, as well as our product managers. They're all together in there. If you have feedback on the process, or if you have questions about how to do any of this, we are available in there most weekdays to kind of help you along your process of developing with Hygraph. So slack.hygraph.com for that. And everything that we did here today is part of our free plan, and you can get a free account at app.hygraph.com/signup. You can go there, sign up. Again, when you go there, you also have available to you not just the blank project that we started with today, but all these lovely starters. We have commerce. We have a composable commerce. This is the skincare one that I talked about. We have Hygraphlix. We have enterprise content, which is a big news site, documentation site in Remix, marketing website. All these are great places to start, especially like the blog. I think the blog is a nice, simple one that we could have started with today as well. All that's available when you sign up, app.hygraph.com/sign up. And with that, before I go, I got another question from Peter. If I post my data using API endpoint, how do I ensure that it is saved as published and not draft? You'll do another query on that. So it is kind of a step-by-step process on that. When you create it, it creates into draft. When you get a response from that draft, you can get the ID in that. So whenever you're doing a mutation in GraphQL, just like in a query in GraphQL, you can get a response back. And part of that response is going to have the ID of the document that was created. You use that ID, and then you do a publish mutation on that ID. So it's a two-step process on that, but it will get it to the publish stage for you. A lot of the times when we're doing these things, we recommend going into draft and then manually doing it into publish, but I understand that there are a lot of good programmatic reasons for wanting both at the same time. So you do a follow-up mutation based on the ID that you get back from that query. That's an excellent question, though. All right. Well, I'm going to call this a day. Like I said, be sure to join us on slack.hygraph.com. We'll answer any questions that you've got. And until then, we're going to have another stream next week. Come on back, and we'll see you next time.